you were paralyzed, also in a motorbike accident, but you had this dream of riding the Dakar.
Came in too fast and he didn't make the corner and he crashed into me, and a number of other riders rode over me as well, but I landed on top of my head and the brace went through my back, and then I was unconscious. I'd knocked out or smashed up like 12 of my teeth first of all, that I couldn't feel my legs, and so I was paralyzed from the chest down. Mental is getting back on a motorcycle is a really big one, and I just hit this cow. I was unconscious and I was lying there for several hours. Separated my collarbone from my shoulder, broken ribs right off. I actually tore open my forearm and I exposed the bone. So you have this paralysis, and then you start climbing and you're getting out and you're getting out and you're making progress, and then whap, you just hit this another setback, and maybe it's time now to just, get out of bikes and give up on this Dakar goal and all that sort of stuff. It's freaking insane, but it shows you don't quit, ever.
Joey Evans, welcome
Hey.
to Challenge to Champion, brother. I'm
Thank
so
you, man.
excited to have you here. And we are in a lot of similar situations. You have been through a lot what I'm going through. So I'm super excited and enthusiastic about today. I read your book about the year after my accident,
Oh, no ways. Okay.
where one of my friends introduced your book to me.
Okay.
He was also a motorbike rider, and he told me you'll be inspired by this. And since I've read that book, I wanted to speak to you. And this is actually just an excuse.
Bring it on. It's all good.
Let's do a podcast, then I can get the guy in the room. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you for being here.
Anytime.
And thank you for writing that book. I don't think that a lot of people can comprehend the things that we go through and that you have gone through that haven't experienced this. People can't picture what you're going through. And in reading that book and seeing, I also went through this.
That's it.
That's probably still coming. This is the challenges. So I found it really helpful to have that book.
Oh, dude, that feels good. Thank you, man.
So tell me firstly,
Yeah.
the book's name is Para to Dakar because
Yeah.
you were paralyzed, also in a motorbike accident, but you had this dream of riding the Dakar. And of course, being a paraplegic, that totally throws that dream away.
100%. Yeah.
And also the Dakar being like the most difficult bike race in the world. And that's like the ultimate challenge.
That's kind of how I saw it. It's, I was always, I had a goal to race the Dakar Rally before I was paralyzed or anything like that. And I was working towards it, but it was really just it was like this big dream in the sky kind of thing, if that makes sense, because it was so much money, so much, money was the big one, so much sacrifice, so much like, you got to be a certain level rider and all that sort of stuff. And it just felt very unachievable, but it was...
And that's even before the accident.
That was before the accident. And I mean, any regular guy who rides bikes, who knows a bit about racing will know that just to get to the start of that race is almost impossible, for an average guy. And so, it felt like that. And then when I was in the hospital and I was paralyzed and I'm like, man, that would be... To still do that would be the sort of ultimate. And it's kind of one of those things. Exactly. That's it. The ultimate comeback. And it kind of like when you think about it, you're like, yeah, it's kind of scary and I don't think it's really possible. But you think about it and you go like, but if I did, and you kind of get those goosies. And that was kind of the way I viewed that goal, in the hospital.
That is like the ultimate story. I don't know if you know the typical thing that they speak about, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Every movie is based on that, where the hero of the story goes through a tremendous upset.
Yeah.
Something goes terribly wrong. That's what makes a good story.
Well,
if it was just up all the time, it wouldn't be a nice story to watch.
100%. I mean, if you ever go to a talk or something and you go to someone who's maybe a Springbok rugby player or an Olympic gold medalist or something like that, and they stand there and they tell you about how they were like, you know, the top guy in grade 8 in high school, and they were rugby captain through high school, and then they got a scholarship to go play rugby here, and then they went and they did this, and then they were chosen for this team, and then they ended up playing for Springbok, and you're like, dude, that's a sweet story, man, but it's like, I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like just everything working out right, and it's amazing when things like that happen, but it's not inspiring, and it doesn't make you feel like, oh man, that's really cool, or I can relate to it, you know. Whereas like when you have a guy who has a journey where things go wrong and things get stuffed up and he gets knocked back and that kind of stuff, those are the ones we relate to. Those are the ones that like, yes, I get that, because I have setbacks and I'm flawed and I'm, you know, so the stories where guys have stuff go wrong, that's the stuff that has depth to it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And you know what I think is amazing, that even people, they don't have to go through what we're going through to benefit from the story.
Yeah.
It can also encourage the person that just went through a breakup.
Exactly.
I know I feel like shit now.
Yeah.
But this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And there is hope.
100%.
Because look at, I'm going through this, and now I'm looking through the eyeglass of this guy.
Yeah.
So my situation isn't that bad.
Yeah.
I experience it as bad, but there is hope.
Well, we have all these areas of our lives. You know, you have, like, for us, perhaps our biggest challenge, and I'm just assuming here because it might not be the case, but perhaps our biggest challenge in our lives has been physical. You know, a physical injury, you know, that's changed everything physically. So physically, everything's harder, from trying to get around, trying to spend time with your mates, trying to, you know, all the toilet issues, all that sort of stuff. That's physically, it's hard. But you look at somebody else, they might have this great setup physically, you know, they've got this great body, everything works, everything's sorted, but the dude is like seriously financial challenges, you know, massive, and that, for that guy, that's his big thing. Someone else goes through a divorce, someone else might lose a child, you know, and it's something that is like, I mean, you have a child, and I think you'd agree with me, you'd take paralysis over losing a child.
Definitely.
Exactly. And so it's like everybody has different areas and everybody has different challenges, and I think we relate to other human beings or people around us by going like, they're also challenged. It doesn't need to be the same challenge, but it's like they also have a challenge. And I think that's the commonality when we read stories about people going through pretty crappy times. Yeah.
I was able to gain a lot of empathy for people.
Yes.
Because what I noticed is everyone can see what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
And other people's
struggles,
we can't see, so we
invisible.
Can't easily help them.
Yeah.
When someone see I'm struggling on a ramp or on an incline or getting into my car, they can say, listen, can I help you?
Yeah.
When you see someone else, they're carrying a lot of baggage that we don't know about, that we can't see, so we can't help.
Yep.
And it's a lot more difficult to tell someone, listen, help me.
Exactly.
You need to help me.
Oh,
I'm struggling.
I felt that a little bit because, you know, I was, so the, you know, for the viewers' sake, you know, just to explain a little bit. So I have a spinal cord injury, and I started off fully paralyzed. But
give us a bit of the accident.
Sure. Okay, great. So it was 2007, so a number of years ago now, and I was at a race, off-road race in Heidelberg, just south of Joburg, and I was lying second in the championship. It was the second last race of the season. I wanted to win this regional championship. It was the Hare Scramble Series, and I was, you know, be very similar to like a GXCC type thing we have now in South Africa, that sort of stuff. And I'm second last race season. I'm racing Open Pro. I want to win this championship, and I'm on that start line. Flag drops, and I just go for it. It's very important I get a good start because a lot of dust with that kind of racing. I get into that first corner in the first couple positions, and a guy behind me swing on, and I went down really hard. He went down. And a number of other riders rode over me as well. And one of the big things was that I landed on top of my head, and I was wearing one of those braces, and the brace went through my back. It was one of the old types where it was like that hard carbon fiber thing down the back, and that broke my T8 and T9 vertebra. And it broke the vertebrae off the ribs, and it crushed my spinal cord. And then I was unconscious for several minutes. And when I came around, I'd knocked out or smashed up like 12 of my teeth, first of all. And then we realized that I couldn't feel my legs. And then I lay there for several hours because there was a lot of complications with the ambulance that day and things, long story. But then I was taken to 3 different hospitals over the next 48 hours, and I landed up at the Meal Med unit in Pretoria. And that was where I learned the extent of my injuries. And what I'd done is I'd crushed my spinal cord, so I was paralyzed from the chest down. And at the time, they said that how it would be the rest of my life, with no feeling or no movement below my chest. And then in that hospital, they fused my back. They just fused the 2 vertebrae, the T8 and T9. And I watched my legs get skinnier and skinnier, and that whole reality just kind of hit home and stuff. But then one day my big toe moved. I could move my big toe just a little bit, just a little twitch. And
But with your action, with you
correct,
trying to move
at first we thought it was just another spasm, because you get a lot of spasms. You'll relate to a lot of this. And then I started to get, as we went along, I started to get a bit of movement in my ankle, a little bit of feeling in my quad, and slowly over, you could say, like the next year, I started to get a little bit more. And so I was, my injury is what you call an incomplete spinal cord injury, where my understanding is yours is a complete spinal cord injury. So I have some nerves that work and some nerves not. So I start off complete, but then I have an opportunity to get some stuff back, and it's a total lottery.
It's like neuroplasticity at work, where you learn new neuropaths, because there's still a connection in the spinal cord.
Yeah.
Where if it's a complete break, it's totally severed.
That's it, done.
So there's no connection.
Correct, yes.
But so if I can explain it in this way, you have a bunch of wires. That's basically your spinal cord. And now say the last wire is the movement of your legs. Now that gets damaged or bruised or whatever. Then your body shuts that off.
Yeah.
But the way I understand it, you have a couple of extra, like spare neuropaths.
Okay.
And then you can learn to move your legs through those paths. That's the way I understand it.
I wouldn't be able to tell you on those sort of levels and stuff. Do you know what I mean? The way that it was explained to me, which helped to make a lot of sense with my injury, and obviously, neither of us here are doctors, so we both kind of like giving a layman's thing. But if you imagine a piece of celery, and then you smack it with a hammer, and then you take each of those individual strands, and you see, that one's broken, that one's broken, that one's broken. Oh, here's one that's fixed. That one is movement of your ankle. You get to keep that. Oh, that one's broken. That one's broken. Oh, here's this. So, like, for instance, now I'm naturally right-footed and right-handed, but with my lower body now, my left is a lot stronger than my right, because I have more nerves on the left than the right left over. I still have to take medication every day to digest food, so I don't have a great digestion.
So there's some function that never came back.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you an idea. So I still self-catheter every day, so I can hold urine, but I struggle to release, because that's one of the areas of the nerves that's quite badly damaged for me. So I have to carry catheters every day, and I self-catheter, so I can hold, but I have to use catheters to release. So I self-catheter about like 5 or 6 times a day now. Now you talk about invisible challenges, and that for me is an invisible challenge. So people will see me, and they might talk to me, and they know about the Dakar stuff, and they're like, "Man, it's so awesome! You're all healed up."
You're healed, yeah.
I'm like, I've been having to put a catheter where you don't want to put it, 5 or 6 times a day for the last 17 years. That's not fully healed, bro. Yeah. You know what I mean? I can't run. I can't jump. My legs are still very weak. I spasm when my adrenaline goes, or when I get tired. My feet are permanently pins and needles, so I don't have proper feeling. I can't feel hot or cold or pain sensation below my chest.
That pain sensation is very important
around heaters, around motorcycle exhausts, all that kind of stuff, for sure. And it also means I can't sweat from my chest down. So it's difficult to regulate my body temperature, especially in the deserts and that kind of stuff. So I tend to sweat like twice as much above there as my body tries to compensate. So it's all like, but you look at that and you go like, yeah, but I can ride bikes, but I can, I can walk, I can do a lot of stuff. So it's like, if I view my injury as what I lost, it's incredibly depressing. But if I view it what I have, it's amazing.
Just the perspective
exactly.
change.
So if I compare Joey to Joey before accident, this sucks. But if I compare Joey to day of accident, this is amazing. And so it's a headspace thing. So like, to give you an idea, the first time they showed me that catheter, and I'm like, you put it where? It's how long? It was like, it's like, what? And you show your buddies and they're like, no. And the guys cringe and grab their crotch. They're like, dude, no. But it's like, for me now,
it's like this
exactly
long.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's like 40 centimeters long. And you get different sizes. I use a 14. I think it's like a little bit narrower than a pencil kind of thing. It's proper. And but it really is one of those things where it's like, it's all in your head, man. Like really, it's literally not that big a deal physically. It's more how you perceive it that's the challenge. For me to use a catheter now, it takes me like 5 seconds. It's done. I'm finished. It's easy game. Nowadays, you have all these disposable ones, stuff you didn't have when I had my injury. But it's like nowadays, you got all sorts of stuff. It is so easy. And it's just in your head. If you see it as a big deal, it's a big deal. If you see it as not a big deal, you just do it and move on with your life.
Yeah. How did you, in that first couple of days in Millmate, how did you deal with the mental aspect of this? Because it's a physical problem.
Oh, yeah.
But it affects your mentality.
Yeah. Well, something that I've realized, I guess, since then and over the years, and also it's something which affects racing a lot, is mental is everything. Like, people say like, yeah, your mental game's important. It's more than important. It's everything. You will see some guys will maybe have a couple fingers amputated. Now, for someone like you or me, with the physical challenges that we've had, you'll look at that and go like, dude, bring it on, man. Couple of fingers, gooi it, But for someone else, they're like, that is massive. And that is like the end of their life. And now they're deformed and they can't do stuff they used to. And these guys will go into they'll plummet mentally. In the process, they become a miserable dude who's like feeling sorry for himself all the time, who isn't performing, and he's just a difficult guy to be around him. He'll lose his marriage, he'll lose relationship with his kids, he'll lose his job, he'll like over a couple of fingers, and then you'll get another dude who's a quadriplegic, which, as we've discussed before, is way worse than being paraplegic. Like it's not slightly worse; it's 100 times worse.
You lose all.
Everything from neck down. So the big thing is you now become reliant on other people
for everything.
Correct. Whereas for you can still, it's hard, but you can function on your own. You still have your individuality, if that makes sense. Independence. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
And I can get in my bakkie. I can go on my own.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is
that's
for
valuable.
A young male. That's everything.
100%.
And that is the first thing I did.
Yeah.
When I got out of hospital, we changed over my bakkie to hand controls.
Yep.
So that I can at least get into the bakkie and go to the gym on my terms.
Massive. And so you'll get a guy who's a quadriplegic, but he has a good headspace. That dude will keep his marriage, he'll keep his job, he'll keep his relationship with his kids. His buddies want to hang out with him because he's still funny and he still laughs, and he can laugh at his own injuries, and they'll joke around, and they'll take him swimming, and they'll have to just chuck him in the pool out the wheelchair, and everyone's laughing, and it's a good time. And it's like, that's the dude who will still live his life in spite of massive physical challenges. And it's not the level of the injury, it's not the extent of the physical side it'll have on his life. It's purely his attitude towards life, towards his injury. Positive attitude is everything.
And I think also this gives you the opportunity to build massive character.
Yeah.
And I think that I saw after my accident, people feel sorry for you, and they're very regretful of what you went through and all of those. But if you don't adapt and still be a social person, still be that friend, because that other people who's supporting you, they're also going through life. And a year later, they can't just be supporting you. They also need something from you. You're part of it.
You're not the only dude with problems, bud.
You need to be able to continue. And again, with the empathy, I mean, people are going through life and they're going through hardships. You're going to have to be able to stand up for them sometime.
100%. You spoke about empathy now, and you mentioned a bit earlier when we were chatting, and you were saying that you developed a lot more empathy, and that was something that I felt huge. And one of the big areas I felt that is with old people. So when you look at an old person, you'll see an old person. And when people look at someone in a wheelchair, they see someone in a wheelchair. And I remember, especially in the beginning, I was in a wheelchair, missing half of my teeth. And obviously you lose all bowel control as part of this. So I'm wearing nappies. I've got an indwelling catheter, so I've got a bag of urine on my leg. And people would speak to me different. They would treat me different. It was like, I was like, what's happening? It was like crazy.
I'm fine, guys.
Yeah, I'm like, but it was like, why are you talking like that? Why are you treating me like that? And I'm like, I'm not this guy that you see. I'm like a tough physical biker dude. Like, you don't need to talk to me like that. But they talk to you how they see you. And I realized that I'm a different guy trapped in this body. And I think a lot of old people are very similar to that. There's someone who might have like fought in wars, There are guys that have like done crazy cool stuff in their lives, that have had a rich history of, they've had children, they might have lost loved ones, they've had businesses and that have failed and come back from it. They've been through life. They've got these rich characters, but they're in this old, frail body. And you treat the person like that old, frail person. Meantime, they're like that lion at the Kruger that's full of scars and stuff. That dude's got history, man. And I think it's very frustrating to be an older person in that type of setup where you're not the same person people perceive you as. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you have that experience and that lived life. And I can assume that they still see themselves in that way.
That's it, yeah.
And also a bit confused. Why do people speak to me like this?
I think that's the big difference between when you get paralyzed and when you get old. When you get old, it happens slowly. So over time, people start to treat you slightly different, And whereas when you're paralyzed, it's like one day, and then the next day, whoop, you're that dude. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the big difference. Just on a bit of a funny note, if you want to know if you're old or not, if you're not sure if you're old, you just got to trip over in public. If people laugh, you're young. If people rush and they go, oh, you're okay, you're old.
Yeah, definitely. Let me help you, sir.
That's it. You're old, man.
Yes. Okay, so you were in the hospital and you went through the biggest part of your recovery, I think, over 3 years after the accident. When were you starting to be able to stand up again? Because I remember that part in your book where you said you were at the physio and you were being able to stand up, and then you thought, if I can do this, I should just be able to get my leg over a motorbike.
Oof, man, it's always a tricky one. People will say, like, how long did it take you to walk? I'm like, well, what do you consider walking? You know what I mean? It wasn't like one day, now I can.
Now I remember how to do it.
Exactly. It was just this gradual, if you looked at it in terms of a graph, it's just like this. Over such a long period of time. So even years later, you're still slightly improving and stuff. Generally, what happens with a spinal cord injury, with the nerve side, what you have after the end of the first year is pretty much what you can expect.
And that's basically after spinal shock has gone.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's it. The spinal shock's gone, the inflammation is gone, and it's kind of like that's where you're at. And then you get to work with that. So just because you have a nerve going to your quad, for instance, your quad has completely disappeared in that time. And so now you got to start from scratch and try to build that muscle up. And sometimes it's gone so much that it's gone. You can't build it.
Totally.
But it's disappeared. So now you don't have it. So it's like, so it's hard to say. It's not like one day click and then suddenly, and you got to earn it, So when you have an incomplete injury, you're fortunate in the way that you're given an opportunity to earn it back. Does that make sense? You know,
Yes.
as you know, if someone's complete, you don't get the opportunity for some stuff. You get opportunity to like change how you feel mentally, work your upper body, do a lot of stuff to make your life better, but you don't get to work that calf. No matter how much you want to, if it's not there, it's not there. And so you get this opportunity, and then it comes down to, okay, what are you going to do with that opportunity? So I met another guy early on, and he was incomplete. So he was very, now understand everyone's different with spinal injuries, you know, but he was also incomplete. So he had some stuff, but not other stuff.
There's still a severity aspect of it.
Correct.
It can be a lot more severe.
It's so nuanced, you know. You got everything from a guy who's perfect, but he can't feel something the size of a coin on his knee. Do you know what I mean? All the way to someone who's totally complete, where zero movement, zero everything, plus spasms and massive pain that they can do nothing about. And you know what I mean? It's a whole big scale that everybody's on this scale somewhere in different ways. But I met this guy, and I was getting fitted for my first wheelchair, because you start off using hospital wheelchairs, but then you go get fitted for a wheelchair, and a wheelchair is certain sizes, certain types of pillows, certain types of backrest. There's like 1,000 different things about wheelchairs, which we also chatted about a bit earlier that, you know, most people don't know. So I'm getting fitted for this, and he's also at this wheelchair place, and he's getting fitted for his second wheelchair. And he was saying, you know, we were chatting there and stuff, and he was saying, yeah, he can move his legs a bit and stuff, and he's able to stand, but he says it's just so much quicker, you know, getting around on the wheelchair and stuff, that it's just, you know, it's just more practical. So he's just decided to do that. And I remember listening to that and going like, what? No, dude, you got to work this. What are you doing? You know what I mean? And it kind of left an impression on me. Now I can't judge the dude, because I had like a 5-minute interaction with him. I don't know everything else, but it left an impression on me that like, I don't want to be a guy who had a chance and didn't take it. You know, and so that was something that motivated me to just do everything I possibly could. And it's hard. It's not just like going to the gym. It's like when you don't have bowel control and you're in a physio session and now you mess yourself. And it's incredibly embarrassing being a grown man having these kind of issues, and then the nurses will take you back to the bathroom, and then they've got to try to clean you up because you can't do it yourself. It's really tough. And then you get changed and stuff, and it's really tough and difficult. Now you have a choice. Do they just put you back in your bed and you're like, okay, well, today was a bit of a waste? Or do you go back down to that physio session and you're like, I still had 15 minutes to go and I'm going to go finish it off? It's those kind of things that are hard. You know, it's hard mentally, if that makes sense, you know? And so the strategy that I used in the beginning was one day at a time. And I think this can work for a lot of guys, is that when you're in a really, really dark place, like that worst time, that rock bottom stuff where you can't think of the future, everything's the stuff up. It'll never be right. And you know it'll never be right and all that sort of stuff. Then you go, okay, well, what can I do today? Just today. What can I do today to make my life slightly better today?
1% each day.
Exactly. That's all you got to do, just today. And on that day, you get up, you get showered, you brush your teeth, you have some proper breakfast, you get to that physio session, and you just do what you can do today. You don't think about everything else. And if you just do that and get through that day, that is an achievement. And then you do the same the next day. And often when you do that, time is ticking away, and it does get better, and you learn. You either get better physically or you work yourself through that problem mentally, and you slowly start to heal. But you got to stay in the game. You got to keep ticking over one day, just until you start to go, okay, I can now look at this week. I can now look at this month. Now I can start to face the rest of my life. But in those darkest times, one day at a time.
Yeah, and I've heard, like they say, how do you build exceptional character? It's like building a mountain with layers of paint.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before. That's
every day, just a thin slither.
That's it. I love it.
And if you look 10 years back,
Yeah.
I've done something.
That's really cool. I've never heard that one before.
And
I like
think
that.
it's really difficult because
Yeah.
progress isn't easily to see when it's
Yeah.
such small increments. But it's
But
happening.
you look back 6 months, you look back, I mean, you're sitting here now easily, well, I don't know how easily, but you're sitting here frankly talking about spinal cord injuries and that kind of stuff. You know, here, and you've been obviously doing these podcasts now for some time, and it's like you're openly talking about stuff that was horrendous just, you know, 4 and a bit years ago. You know, that you couldn't even face. It was like, what? You know what I mean? No,
This is therapy.
exactly. But 100%. But if someone had told you that day that this is what you'll be doing, you'd be like, never ever. But it's those little bits. And so you imagine where you are now, imagine where you are in 4 years time
Yes.
from now. You know what I mean? It's like, it's amazing. And I mean, you're living proof of this.
A lot of people told us it will get better, and you can't see it at that stage.
Yeah.
But time helps.
Yeah. Well, you
because-
think of people who lose a loved one. You say it'll get better. You're like, it will never get better.
Yes.
Like, I literally just lost my child, or I lost my wife, or I lost my husband. They will never come back. This will never be right, ever. And they're right. It will never be right. But your ability to handle it
Yes.
gets better.
Yes.
And that's the difference. And so it does get better, if that makes sense, because you get
it's
better.
different,
Yeah.
but you'll be able to handle it.
That's it.
Your ability to handle it will improve.
That's it. You know, you kind of nailed it there. But
Wow.
it's hard to see that when you're in that
It's
dark
really
place.
hard to
Yeah.
see. But we'll get to what are the coping mechanisms that you used. But I wanted to ask you, as you were describing that previous story to me where you saw the guy in the wheelchair,
Yeah.
how much did that pressure weigh on you, knowing that you would be able to regain some abilities?
It was, I didn't know, you know, like, obviously you look back now and there's a lot of things you would have probably done different, or this or that. But at the time, it started off complete. And every day where I was that day, like when that toe had that little flicker for the first time, that could have been the end of the road. Fully paralyzed with one flickering toe. That's all we knew. And so I wiggled that toe as much as I could. And then, you know, one day I started to get a little bit in the ankle. And so I'd move that little movement as best I could. I'd lie there in the bed and just twitch, because I knew that was connected to muscles, and I need to look after those muscles and try to get them going again. And so there was no point where I knew I would be able to walk again. There was no point. It was just a little bit, and then you just do that. Something that was very late coming back was my hip flexors. So that's the muscle that brings your leg forward. So I had quads, I had some calf movement, and I had, that was pretty much it, you know, quads and some calf and, you know, obviously a little bit of ankle, but very, very little. But so I could stand, but I couldn't move my legs forward. I didn't have the muscle that pulled it forward, and that was for a long, long time. And they put these braces on your legs that hold them straight and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like that, and then when that started to fire, when I started to get some hip flexors, that was a point where it's like, I'm going to walk again, you know, and that was pretty good. But then you got to keep going and keep going. And then when you're walking again, now you're walking badly with crutches and you're dragging your feet, and, you know, like,
Can't lift your
that's
ankle.
it. Yeah. Lifting feet, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, and then you work on that, and then, you know, slowly, one day at a time.
Yes, it's a crazy story. Okay, but so you did that recovery with the physiotherapist for a long time, and was that the stage where you reignite this dream to do the Dakar? When did that happen?
Well, when I was in that hospital, you know, we were saying earlier about, you know, you get those goosebumps. You're like, man, if I could pull this off, that would be incredible. But it didn't seem possible, if I'm being honest, back in that hospital. It was just like, yeah, that would be incredible, but it's not going to be possible. And then the first time I rode a bike was, I think it was about 2.5 years after breaking my back. You know, it was just a random, you know, I had a buddy, we were, you know, pulling up to have a picnic with the family, and across the road in the veld was my buddy, and he had a motorcycle there and a friend of his, and I walked over to him, we chatted a bit, and then he was like, hey man, you're gonna give it a go, you know? And I got on this bike, and I fell over with the bike still between my legs. When I tried to kickstart it, I couldn't kickstart it on my own, so they started it for me. And then I rode just about, you know, 250 meters or something like that in a big circle on this flat piece of felt. And it was amazing, not being able to run or jump or do all these things, to be able to just twist that throttle and just move effortlessly was just incredible. And I was like, I can do this, man. I could do this again. And then I started riding again. And I bought a second-hand bike, and I got all the suspension lowered, and I cut the foam out of the seat because I needed to get my feet really flat on the ground to be able to hold it up, and started riding again. And suddenly this dream just started to get more and more possible. And it was like a little bit more and a little bit more. And suddenly, like, I'm starting to ride a bit of enduro again. And I'm going like, man, if I can ride this stuff, surely I can do a rally type of thing. And then the first rally that I did was the Amageza rally in 2013. So that's 6 years after breaking my back. And it was a 3-day race, 2,000 kilometers from Cape Town up to just past Uppington. And there was 46 guys who started that race, and only 17 guys finished. But I finished that race. And that really, in 2013, coming back from that rally, I was like, I could do this. Like, this could actually be possible. And then I really committed. 2013, I was like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And then...
Let me just stop you quickly there. Yeah. What did your wife say at that stage?
Oh, man, she... if I spoke about the Dakar goal,
how did that conversation go? Even just getting back on a motorcycle.
Yeah, getting back on a motorcycle is a really big one. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because it is, first of all, to give you an idea of, it's hard to explain all the dynamics in a short, kind of thing like this. But to give you an idea, myself and my wife Meredith, we are complete opposites. Now, we got married quite young. She was 20 when we got married, and I just turned 23. And then by the time I was 28 and she was 26, we had 4 daughters already. So we got married very young. We had 4 kids right away. It was some pretty crazy times, but we are complete opposites in terms of that. I'm more extroverted. I'm more of a risk taker. That's sort of, I'm like an entrepreneur in terms of my business world, all that sort of stuff. Those are kind of the characteristics that I have. And she is more introverted. She is risk averse. She has no desire for like risk and adventure and that kind of stuff. She loves spending time with family. She loves reading. She loves watching movies. We're very opposite, and so
it's going to be difficult to break your back while reading.
Exactly. And she likes that it's difficult. She likes the fact that that's how it is. And so, so the big thing that works with our setup is that some situations I have to look at it and I go like, to me that just doesn't seem worthwhile, but it's worthwhile to her, and so it's important to me because it's important to her, even if I don't agree or I don't understand it. And so a lot of stuff in our lives, we'll do it that way. And with the riding thing, she thinks it's crazy to get back on a bike. Why would you do that? You were paralyzed on a bike. It makes no sense to her at all. For me, it's a case of, I nearly died. I nearly lost it all. And now I have a second chance. So what am I going to do with my second chance? Am I just going to live it safe my whole life and just live this kind of like how I would perceive it, this like boring, just kind of life? Or am I going to make sure that one day when I check out that I freaking lived, that I did everything I wanted to do and stuff? And so riding again was a massive part about living again. And when you ride, as you mentioned, I think we spoke about it a bit earlier about going hunting with your buddies and that kind of stuff. It's not the hunting. It's not the riding. It's the hanging out with your mates, being in the sunshine, being in the outdoors, sitting around the fires in the evening. And so to be able to ride again gave me such a rich part of my life back that I'd lost. And so that's why riding was really important for me to get back on. And so to be able to go on trips to Lesotho with my buddies and ride in the mountains and that kind of stuff, when I never thought I'd have those opportunities again, it was amazing. And my wife saw that, and she saw it was important to me. Anybody who's married to a guy who is a similar personality to us, they'll know that you need to do your stuff and it makes you a better guy. When you get a chance to do that stuff, and you get a chance to burn that energy and you get a chance to live your life, it's a lot better. And so, I can't say for all guys, but for me, I need that as part of my life, and Meredith gets that. Probably the best way to explain it is, we've all got that one buddy who is super selfish. He plays golf all the time, or he plays video games all the time, or he's off riding his bike all the time, whatever it is, and his family is falling apart behind the scenes, and you're just like, what are you doing? But we've also got that other buddy. He's never allowed to go on a trip. He's never allowed to do anything. He's always at home. And that dude is he's like the wolf in the garden, with a collar around his neck, domesticated, and he sees the other wolves on the mountain, and he's like, man, I want to be with those guys, but he's not. And so both of those guys are a mess. They're both a mess. Both ways, you got a miserable dude or you got a guy losing his family. Either way, it's like, those are not wins. And so balance is the key. And for myself in my relationships with my wife and my daughters, the balance shifts. Sometimes, I'm riding too much, and then we'll talk about it and we recorrect. And then other times, I'm frustrated because I'm not doing enough stuff, or it's hard for me that I'm not getting a chance to have that adventurous side of me. And so we kind of keep this kind of road like this where we kind of recenter. And that's the key, is to find a good balance where you're a good dad, where you're a good husband, when you're working hard at your job, but you're also getting to do some cool adventures and getting richness out of your life. Then you become this balanced person, and then it's possible to have great balanced relationships. And that, obviously, it's like, my daughters have their own goals and dreams. I need to help them achieve those goals and dreams. Same with my wife Meredith, so you got to kind of make sure you're ticking all the boxes. It doesn't help that you have great adventures, but life's a mess, and it doesn't help that you're always there for your family and you're just dead inside.
And I can think that if you are someone with the spirit of adventure, you will be a better father, you'll be a better husband when having that box ticked off.
That's who she married. That's the guy she married. She didn't marry a guy who's just doesn't want to do anything. She married that guy. That's the guy she wants to be with. So you do need to still be that guy who's got that adventure.
Do you think you changed for a bit while you couldn't do those things?
Oh, for sure, man. It was tough because I couldn't do them. It was tough not having that sort of stuff. But there's times and seasons as well. Sometimes you need to go through that stuff where it isn't everything balanced. But then when you have the opportunity to rebalance, then rebalance. So yeah, and even now, to give you an idea, last year in November, I went and raced the Baja 1000 in Mexico. It was amazing, and it took a lot of commitment leading up to it, a lot of time, kind of training and organizing. It really sucked up a lot of life towards the end of, a lot of last year, I guess you could say, but especially towards the end. And then I was overseas for just over 3 weeks, I think 4 weeks, something like that. So a long time away from home and all that sort of, it was tough. And I came back, towards the end of November, and here we are now, middle of January. I haven't ridden now in the last 7 weeks. You know what I mean? And we've spent a lot of family time together. We've done cool Christmas stuff. We've done all this sort of stuff. And the bikes, they sit there in the garage, get a bit of dust on them. It's cool. It's no worries, man.
Priorities can shift a bit.
Exactly. We find a bit of balance, and a time will come again, and then boom, we'll do another adventure, and things will carry on. But it's like,
but at least you filled that bucket a bit. Now that bucket can stand a bit again.
Well, and you're constantly filling in these little buckets. Some guys will say, how do you get your wife to let you go riding? I'm like, well, you got to balance it out. And so it's just,
when you're there, you need to be there.
Yeah, exactly. But it's to give you an idea, this is a bit of a silly little thing, but it's something that meant a lot, and that helped a lot with my stuff, was when I went and raced Dakar. It was a 13-day race. And so what I did is I went and bought 13 gift bags, and without my wife knowing, or my daughters. And then what I did is on each bag I wrote where I was that day, where I'd be riding, the distances, all that sort of stuff, and a little message to them. And then I went and I found all different gifts for 13 days. It took me forever, little trinkets or little gifts, and stuff. And I filled these bags with different gifts, and I stapled them all closed, and my wife knew nothing about it. And then the day I left, I put all of those bags out. And so each day I was on the race, you know, they got to open these little gift bags with all these little gifts and stuff inside like that. Now, that's something that took a lot of effort. That was, especially when I'm like trying to get to Dakar and I'm trying to organize, you know, what you put in your camelback and your toolkits and your nutrition and all the spares and the flights and the accommodation, and you're like, you know, you're dealing with like hectic stuff. So to now drive around to shops and buy like all these little gifts and stuff was super tough. But that made a massive difference to the experience they had while I was away. And that's, it's a silly little thing, but it's one of the ways you balance it. You do that kind of stuff.
You were involving them,
correct,
in your experience, in your adventure.
And if you're a dude riding bikes and you're going to Lesotho every third weekend and you're doing these epic trips and that kind of stuff, and you haven't done a family holiday in 2 years, dude, you need to fix your stuff, man. That isn't working, you know. So it's like you gotta find those balances. If you're doing in between that stuff, you're doing like a nice romantic weekend away, and then you're doing a nice, you know, a family holiday, and you're kind of balancing it out and stuff, and you're making sure you get to your kids' sports days, and you're making sure you get to prize givings, and you're making sure you do nice stuff, you know, for your relationship, you know, without your kids being there and that kind of stuff. She'll be super stoked when you go riding. She wants you to go riding, you know, but you got to find the balance. If you're struggling to go do your things, it's because your balance is a mess.
Yeah. I remember also in your book, leading up to the Dakar, I don't know if it was a couple of years before or what, you hit a ox or a cow.
Yeah, so that was 2014. So that 2013 race I mentioned now, that Amageza rally, that was like, okay, now I'm committed. And so my next goal, you have to build up a CV. And my next goal was the 2014 Amageza rally. And it was just a few weeks before that. And I did one of my last big training events, an event called the Pongola 500 up in northern KwaZulu-Natal. And I was racing along down this dirt track through the bush, doing over 120 Ks an hour, really fast section. And a cow just stood out from the side of the track. And I just hit this cow. And I was unconscious. And I was lying there for several hours. And then I was taken by road to Richards Bay. And I'd separated my collarbone from my shoulder. I'd broken ribs right off. I actually tore open my forearm and I exposed the bone in my forearm, and I broke my elbow and I tore the triceps muscle off the elbow. So I was pretty messed up, and that was a big one. That was hard, and it was back in hospital and stuff. So you have this paralysis, and then you start climbing and you're getting out and you're getting out and you're making progress, and then whop, you just hit this another setback. And it was a point in my life where I was like, okay, maybe it's time now to just, you know, get out of bikes and give up on this Dakar goal and all that sort of stuff. And that was tough. And it was about 6 months of that, of just not knowing what to do, and a bunch of operations and costs and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, I was in a tough place mentally, if that makes sense, having to give up all this stuff. And I did a little ride where I rode my bike from here in Joburg, where I live, all the way down to Cape Town. It took me 5 days. And I just rode as far as I could every day and stopped and slept and carried on. And it was a time to like reflect and just kind of decide what I'm going to do with this whole goal in my life and things. And I was riding in a place called Die Hel down in the Cape. And I went down into Die Hel and slept there that night. And it was early in the morning, and I rode out, and I'm on my own, just solo riding out of Die Hel. And I stopped my bike and I set my camera up on a rock and I took a little pic, and I thought about this goal to race Dakar, and I thought, you know what, man, I'm still going to do it. You know, I don't want to be a guy that's going to look back on my life and go, I settled. You know, I gave up on big dreams because I faced challenges. I was like, no, I'm still in, you know, and I recommitted. And so I'd missed that Amageza rally that year, but 2015 I went and did the next one, which was 7 days through the Northern Cape and Botswana. I finished that race, and then I went and took all our savings we had as a family, and I went and raced in Morocco in the Mazuga Rally, and I finished that race. It was about 6 days through the Sahara Desert, and then I had everything I needed for my Dakar CV, and I sent it in, and it got accepted. And so 2017 Dakar Rally, I got an entry. 9 years after, well, to the start of the race, it was nearly 10 years from being paralyzed to being on the start line of the Dakar Rally.
Yes, man, it's an amazing journey to get to a goal. And a lot of the times, like in a book, it's maybe one chapter.
Yeah.
But I mean, in life, it's sometimes 10 or 20 years.
Long. I remember when I broke my back, my understanding at the time was that if you broke a bone, you couldn't race for 6 weeks. That's like the standard, dude, broke his arm, he's off for 6 weeks. You watch it with MotoGP, you watch it with, Enduro, all this sort of stuff, and suddenly you've got an injury that will never be right. And to have any kind of like, what would you call it, like recovery is going to take years. Like, it's mind-wise, it's insane. But yeah, it took 10 years, to reach that goal of being on the start line. And even there on the start line, I got a Camelback on me that's got catheters in it. Do you know what I mean? I got these issues I'm going to deal with on this race. I've got to be very, very careful about burning my legs on this exhaust and that kind of stuff. I've got to be careful because if my knee braces rub and they chafe me, I can't feel it. You know what I mean?
And what people don't understand is that when we get a wound, that wound doesn't heal in the same way. It can become a pressure sore.
Yeah, exactly.
And that a pressure sore is like from the inside.
Yeah. Well, that's how pressure sores is the biggest reason that people with spinal cord injuries die. Paralyzed guys, paraplegics. So paraplegics, the way you die is kidney and bladder infections and pressure sores. That's how you die. And if you're quadriplegic, it's those two plus lung infections because you can't cough. And so those are the big ones, man. You got to watch out for that stuff. And yeah, you can't afford. And now you go and ride a bike for 13 days. You know what I mean? You run lots of risks like that.
You can't check every hour if your knee's rubbing.
That's it, yeah.
I mean,
you find out when you take those pants off that evening, yeah.
Yes, that it seems so intense. I saw a couple of videos of you on the Dakar, specifically the second last day.
Yeah.
Where you, maybe you can tell that story where you fell and the car drove over your bike.
Yeah. Whew. So there was lots and lots of stories of Dakar, and obviously we don't have time to cover it all now. There was, I watched fellow South Africans go out with burnt out motors. Walter went out, he'd burn out his clutch and he was out the race on day 4, and that was really difficult. He was a teammate of mine. On a side note, he went back a few years later and finished. So he's a badass dude. And then another guy, came across another South African, David Thomas. He'd crashed, he'd broken his leg in 8 places. I kind of found him in the mountains and helped to put him in the helicopter and stuff. It was like a lot of like real rich human experiences that were like devastating. David also went back later and he went and finished that race. So it's like got some good badass South Africans, man, and you see it every year, these dudes. So it's very proud to be South African. And but it was day 12 of 13. So second last day, I'd finished day 11 like stone last, starting day 12 stone last. I'm really out of my league on this race. I'm just trying to hack my way through and finish. I'm not racing, I'm surviving, and it was mid-morning and we were in this semi-arid desert, and there was this 2-spur track that kind of wound its way along, but the spurs were pretty deep and full of fish, which is like really, really fine dirt, like talcum powder. And I'm in the left-hand rut riding along, and there's vegetation either side, so you can't really ride out of it. You just got to pick a rut and go. And the cars and trucks have caught us now, and these guys are coming through at like double the pace of us. They just, because those 4 wheels naturally track in those ruts, so it's a lot easier for them to drive that terrain. And the alarm goes off my bike saying there's someone behind me, and I turn around expecting to see the guy a couple 100 meters back, and he's like 20 meters back. He's doing double my speed, and I've literally got a couple of seconds to get out the way, and I try to swerve into the vegetation, but that rut was like axle deep, and that front wheel just drags up against the side, and I've committed my weight, and I go down, and as I go down, I separate off the bike, and this guy misses me by centimeters, and I just hear a crunch, and he crashes straight into my bike and then completely rides right over my motorcycle. And I'm on my knees there, and the dust clears, and I'm looking at this bike just destroyed, and the guy stopped about 30 meters away, and the navigator goes like this out the side, and I'm like, no, come back and all this stuff with some other words. And he just got back in that car, and he just drove off, and he just left me there. And effectively I'm out the race. I'm stone lost. There's still 660 kilometers to go, and and my bike is just destroyed. You know, I dragged it out of the track. I stood it up. The whole navigation tower is completely smashed, mangled, you know, broken off the front end of the bike. I'll send you a pic, and you can put it on the video here now so guys can see it. And the exhaust is flattened, bent into the back wheel. The seat's torn out, the mountings, the whole back end of the bike is all ripped up, exposing the wiring and everything. The triple clamps are bent, radiator's damaged, the whole frame of the bike is bent, handlebars are bent. This bike is so completely destroyed. Foot pegs off, right foot peg gone, broken parts of the frame. So it wasn't like the mounting, it was like it broke the whole mounting of it. Just done. And to stand there in the middle of this desert on the second last day, knowing you're out the Dakar after a 10-year journey was pretty tough.
And so you gathered your bike and fixed it in a way that you were able to get it moving.
Yeah. So what I did is I stripped the exhaust off that bike, because the exhaust was all up in the back wheel and everything and completely flat. So there was no airflow through it. So I had to strip it off. So I had it's a 3-piece exhaust. So you got the header, you got a middle, and you got the back. So I had the header, but the middle and back I had to totally strip off the bike. And then I had to
I think also your fuel tank was...
Yeah. So there's 3 fuel tanks on the bike. And 2 of the fuel tanks completely crashed, all just split open and everything.
And the thing is...
And full of sand and everything as well.
On the Dakar, if you go without fuel, you're out as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You don't reach your
so that was it. So I had to isolate the 2 fuel tanks that were damaged, and I just had 1 fuel tank that had some fuel in, and it had just a couple of liters, 2 or 3 liters in, and so I had to change the plumbing on the fuel tanks to just feed into from that one tank, isolate the others, feed in from the one tank, because the others were all full of dirt and everything as well, because they'd broken. Some of them were like the rear one was all completely cracked along the bottom, so all sand has got in these tanks and stuff. So
if that goes
stuffed,
into a fuel line,
you're gone. And so I had to isolate it all and things, and then I stripped the whole exhaust off. I had to strip a lot of the navigation equipment, so I could get the bars to turn a bit, because it was all bent into the front. And I got the bike working without an exhaust and everything, but it's so bent, and the wheels are all like this because of all the triple clamps being bent and everything. So I couldn't ride in the track anymore, because there was a lot more cars and trucks now. Now you're right in the thick of these guys. All the leaders have gone through, and so I just kind of zigzagged through the bush. But I'm running out of fuel. I've got enough fuel for maybe 20 kilometers, and I'm just limping along. I'm going over bushes and around this, and it's like it's taking forever. It's going to take and I've got to sit, and I've got my one foot which is tucked up on the seat, or it's like hanging off the side of the bike, and I'm on day 12 here. I'm physically exhausted at this point. To ride on a fully capable bike is touch and go if you're going to finish, and now to be on a bike that's destroyed with no foot peg and everything's bent up and it's not working properly, and so it would have taken me like 2 weeks to finish that stage. It's like it's not like I'm carrying on and I can finish. I can't finish. It's like it's over. I'm carrying on, but it's foolish. It's ridiculous. I need to just stop. And I just kept going with no hope, thinking back to the last 10 years, all the sacrifice, all the money, and I'm so angry. I'm thinking I'm going to chop that guy up who rode over my bike, and I'm going to bury him in the desert if I find him. It's just over. And I'm just going, and I use that same kind of strategy where I told you about, where it's like one day at a time. And now I'm just going 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters, just to that next bush, and I'm expecting to run out of fuel any moment, just going along. But I'd made the decision that I wasn't going to quit. I was going to go until I couldn't go another meter. That was my goal. And I did that, and I just kept going. And as I'm running out of this fuel, the bike is behind me. Still 65 kilometers to the next civilization where I'm going to even get a chance to get fuel. So I'm never going to make it. And then I found a bike in the desert. Okay, I've just ridden a few kilometers without an exhaust through the bush, trying to stay out of the way. And I've just come across a bike right here. but the rider's being evacuated. He's obviously injured, so I'm just going to take everything off his bike that I need, put it onto mine, and just continue. There's nothing else I can do. And then obviously tonight I'm going to explain to the guy and stuff, but he's been evacuated, so he's out the race. But we're just going to quickly cannibalize what we can. It's freaking insane, but it shows you don't quit ever. And what had happened was the guy had crashed. He'd broken both his arms. He'd been medevaced out in the helicopter, and his bike was left there for the sweeper truck to pick it up at the back of the race. And the rules of Dakar is I can't ride that bike, but I can use parts from that bike. And there was these 3 Argentinian guys in the middle of nowhere, just spectators of the race on old dirt bikes, biker dudes. And these dudes helped me, and we stripped that bike. We stripped the exhaust off that bike. We siphoned the fuel out of that bike. We stripped the whole side of the frame where you got like the kind of whole hanger thing that mounts the back brake and the foot peg and everything. We stripped all that off, put it onto mine.
Was it the same bike that you rode?
Exactly the same bike. It was a
KTM
450 RFR. You know, exactly the same bike as mine. I mean, what are the odds of that as well? And we got my bike working. I still needed handlebars. I needed a radiator. I needed navigation equipment. I needed the seat. I needed the mountings. There was lots and lots, rear mud guards and wiring and all sorts of stuff. But we didn't have time to do all of that. I'd lost so much time the first time. I'd lost a lot of time just limping along. I'd lost all this time fixing it the second time. At this point, I was about 4 hours behind the guy who was in second last. So I'm like way behind everyone. I've still got to try to get in by 4 o'clock the next morning. If I don't get to the next bivouac at 4 a.m., I'm out the race. So I've got to get going. And I rode the rest of that day for hundreds of kilometers through South America. And then it started getting dark, and that night I rode alone. I never saw another bike or quad the whole day, just a few cars and trucks. And then that night I just rode, and it was dune fields and mountain passes and forests and rivers. And at 2:15 the next morning I got to that bivouac, and I slept for 1 hour, and then I rode that bike the last day and finished the Dakar.
I saw the video of you reaching the bivouac. Where you can't go upstairs.
Yes.
You literally fell down.
That's it.
I can just imagine that. And how do you then sleep for an hour and do it again?
Yeah. It's mind over matter at the end of the day. You know, it's like, it doesn't make any physical sense, you know, but it's like you decide that you're going to do something and you do everything you can. And sometimes you can decide you're going to do it. You do everything you can, you fail, you know, but you want to make sure you leave nothing on the table. And that's when you know you did everything you could, when you don't leave anything on the table.
You can't have a regret because you literally did everything.
If you do everything, however it ends, you did everything you could.
Do you think if you didn't go through that previous 10 years of challenges, say you went to the Dakar, not having broken your back and anything like that, and then going through that 12th day?
Out 100%. You know,
just
no,
on that 100%. First with the car driving over your bike.
Probably even before that, to be honest, you know, but it's you know, one of the things that I've learned over the last few years, because as I share the journey and, you know, wrote the book, and I do a lot of speaking at corporate events and that kind of stuff, and we have like Q&A sessions often afterwards and stuff, and people ask you different questions and stuff. And so you now, looking back, I have a lot of time to reflect on stuff and think about stuff and to learn more about resilience and mindset and self-talk and all these kind of things. And one of the things that I've learned is that the data shows that no one is born resilient. No one's born that way. It's something that you develop, and it's something that's earned. And so, like you spoke earlier about empathy, you have a lot more empathy now for people. That's something that you have earned because of your life experience. Mm-hmm. You are also way more resilient now, because you know that day that you found out you were paralyzed and they told you how it would be, you were like, there's no ways. There is no ways I can live like this. That is terrible. It is the worst possible thing. I can't live a life like that. And here you are living that life, married, you know, you have a child. This is like, you're doing it like a badass, dude. And it's because you are stronger now, you're more resilient now than you used to be.
That resilience muscle.
Exactly, that's it. You have to develop it, you have to earn it. And the way you earn it is you do things that are outside of your comfort zone, and you see it as an adventure, and you embrace the challenges, and you grow. That's how it works. And so by going through that paralysis, that helped me develop resilience. By getting caught out at night in Lesotho, prior to that, that developed resilience. By getting caught out at night in Botswana on that Amageza in 2015, I was alone in the bush in Botswana, and I had to get through a few hours there. Not as bad as South America at Dakar, but it was bad. And all of those things just help to develop resilience, that when you're there, now you know, hey, this is going to be tough, but I can do this. You look at anybody who races a race like the Roof of Africa. You go there for the first time, dude, without doing any other off-road racing or anything like that. You are out in the first 10 kilometers, dude. That race is over for you. But if you've ridden enduro, if you know what it's like to suffer, if you know what it's like to just keep going, if you build those skills, if you learn that resilience, if you learn about hydration, and you learn how to ride rocks, and you learn how to find traction where there's no traction, all that sort of stuff, then you put yourself in a place where you can finish a race like that. But you have to build all that stuff to getting there. And it's the same with resilience and everything else. You got to build it. You got to have those tools in your bag, that when you come to time, you got to have those tools there that you can take out.
That makes a lot of sense. It's always a difficult thing to me, because although we have gone through so many rich experiences and challenges and made it through, in a sense, if someone told you that your life could have been different, you could have never had the accident, would you take that option, concerning that your life would have been different at this stage?
Man, that's a tough question that I do get asked, because obviously here I am, in this place in my life, with this kind of history and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, you're so lucky. You got such a cool story. You're lucky." Man, I can tell you that in 2007, lying in that hospital, it didn't feel lucky. That's for sure. And so, if I'm being honest, I don't know, because it's given me a lot of richness in my life, facing these kind of challenges and stuff. But also, here I am. I turned 50 in a couple of, like 3 months now. And I will still have to deal with a lot of issues from the spinal cord injury for the rest of my life. I still have a lot of pain. Every day you're waking up with pain. Every day you're having to deal with a lot of stuff. And as your body deteriorates as you get older, have all these added things on top of it as well. It becomes
a lot more difficult.
It gets more and more difficult. And so it's very difficult to say the richness in life and experience is well worth the physical injury. I don't know if it is, man. Some days I'm like, I'd rather it just never happened. And so a lot of people will say everything happens for a reason. I don't think it does. I think sometimes stuff is just really sucky and it's bad. But what I do think is that you can find reason in your challenges. You can find ways to turn that to your advantage, to make you to grow.
And if it's true or not doesn't really matter.
That's it. Yeah.
If you can find a reason and it helps you,
that's it.
It's valid.
Correct. And so I feel like I've found reason in my challenges, but it would certainly be a lot easier if I didn't have to face those challenges at all. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of the times it's easy for me to think about, I'm doing what I'm doing not because of my accident. It's more despite my accident.
Correct. And I feel like that too. So I don't think that I need the accident to live an awesome life of adventure and rich depth and growth and that kind of stuff. I certainly used it as a catalyst for that, but man, it would be pretty awesome not to have to have done that. Yeah,
I agree with that. But yes, it's just an incredible story. But so you're doing a lot of things for this disabled community. You have a fund, and because having that lived experience, you're trying. You know what the difficulties are. You know what people are going through, and you're trying to help.
100%. When you talk about empathy, when you go through different things, you know what it's like to be there. You know what I mean? You'll see a lot of people, you'll have women that'll come out of abused relationships where they've really had a really tough time. They have a lot more empathy and a lot more passion to help other women in those relationships, because they get it, you know what I mean? So everybody has different things that they feel passionate about. Some people, it'll be looking after animals in distress. There's all sorts of different areas where some people be passionate about education or whatever it is, and often it's a result of life experiences. So for me, having been paralyzed and living in a wheelchair and that kind of stuff, I get it. I get it's what it's like to have those things. And so one of the areas that was really difficult was your inability to hang out with your buddies and do the same stuff you used to be able to do. And so I have a mate, his name's Jeff, super cool dude. He's quadriplegic. Okay, so he had a neck injury, and he had it when he was in his late teens, if I remember correctly. It was a car accident, and he's now in his 40s. And he started a fund called the Adaptive Sports Fund. And what it is we do sports days for people with spinal cord injuries. So it's adaptive sports. So we'll do things like adaptive scuba diving, adaptive snow skiing, adaptive golf, adaptive rock climbing, adaptive go-karting, mountain biking, all this sort of stuff. Now, this stuff costs, as we spoke about earlier, way more than all the average stuff. You know what I mean? It's insane.
Every sport you add 100,000 rand
exactly
worth of expenses.
You add it all on, and it's like, and so it's really difficult. So we are trying to build up equipment. We're trying to build up opportunities for people with spinal cord injuries to do these sports days. And so I went and raced the Baja 1000 last year in Mexico, and as part of that I raised funds for the Adaptive Sports Fund. So I covered all the costs of the race for myself, and I said, anybody who donates to the fund, I'll put your name on the motorcycle. And we had a bunch of people get on board with that, and we raised I managed to raise R250,000 rand towards that. And so one of our big projects for this year is to build a go-kart for quadriplegics. So we built go-karts for paraplegics, so you just use hand controls, but quadriplegics is a whole nother level up, because now you need power steering and you need all sorts of equipment, because they don't have proper use of hands either. So that's one of our big goals, and we do one at least once a month throughout the year doing these kind of stuff. And so I'm super proud to be a part of the Adaptive Sports Fund in helping these things, and to back my buddy Jeff on his goal to bring sports to people with spinal cord injuries.
I love that incentive, man. I would love to get involved in.
That'd be super cool. Yeah.
In the just being part of it, and on the managing side, if I can help in any way, I would love to chat to you on how I can do that.
That would be brilliant, and I'd love to race you in a go-kart as well.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. And if people want to get involved, how do they get involved?
They can check out the Adaptive Sports Fund website. You can just Google it, and then it'll pop up. And there was also on my website, it was joeyevans.co.za. There's a page on there for the fundraising that I did that will take you to it's like a GoFundMe thing, but it's called Give and Gain. So it's got a link on my website. If you just click on where it says Baja 1000, you can click on there, and it'll take you through there to that one. And it was one where we put the names on the bike, but you can still donate through that same channel. But also keep an eye on that page, follow them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram, and you'll see the different events coming up. And you're welcome to reach out to them and offer help in any way. But also, if you are somebody who's paralyzed and you want to go to the events and stuff, drop them a mail, get on the mailing list, make sure you know about the days coming up, and come ride go-karts, come play some golf, come do some cool stuff.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm gonna.
You are gonna come.
There.
Absolutely.
Definitely gonna be there. And then you also do speaking events and so forth. Where can people find you for that?
So also my website, just joeyevans.co.za. So I do a lot of speaking at corporate events. Where I'll tell the journey from being paralyzed to racing Dakar. There's also stuff after that I've done. I did a big race through North Africa called the Africa Eco Race, which was the original Dakar route. We raced from Monaco to Dakar, Senegal. So more stories and all sorts of that kind of stuff. And so I do a lot of that sort of stuff at corporate events and throughout the world. I've spoken on like 6 continents now. All over the world. And so there's all of that. That's on that website. And also, if guys want to read the book about the whole journey, obviously it's a lot more detailed than we've been able to touch on today. It's called From Para to Dakar, and it's available on Amazon. It's also an audiobook. So if guys prefer audiobooks, I'm an audiobook guy, so you can get it on.
Listen to it on Audible.
That's it, yeah.
A lot easier.
It is. I mainly did it on Audible because a lot of bikers don't read, So
Yeah, and
So-
I listened to it from Durban to back to Pretoria.
brilliant.
And
Okay, cool.
It was a great listen.
Brilliant. So yeah, there's that ways as well. And yeah, all my contact details on the website. It's dead easy to get hold of me. But yeah.
Perfect, Joey. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for your insight, and thank you for your journey, man. Thank you for your perseverance, being able to push through everything that life's thrown at you.
Cheers,
And
bro.
it definitely motivates, man.
Thank you, man.
I feel motivated.
That's it. And also, like, you go on just because you have certain things. It doesn't mean you've had the hardest days behind you. They might still be ahead of you, but it also doesn't mean you've had your best days behind you. They're ahead of you too. So it's like, it's just a journey, man.
You choose.
It's just a journey, and we're just here for a short time, and make sure you make the most of it.